Hello everyone, this is Surya Bhagvat. I run the SRE team over here at Harness, and I have been here for close to 3 years now. So first of all, I would like to thank SLOconf for the opportunity to present like how in the last 3 years of our journey defining these SLIs, SLOs, and what lessons have we learned over the last 3 years or so. So let's begin this session, right? Session is called the business of properly setting SLOs. So let's move on to the first one. So if you really take a look at like what an SRE does or what we do, right, on a day-to-day basis, for us, the number one OKR or the number one goal is to ensure the reliability and availability of the product. So what do we do for that? We sit and we monitor the alerts. That's probably the most important thing an SRE does in conjunction with the engineering. Then when a P0 or a P1 alert comes, or even a customer says something is not working, you create an incident channel. You run the incident management, whatever it is, whatever tools you use, you run the incident management. And then finally comes the RCA and the learnings. What did you learn from the alert? What did you learn from the incident? And so on. So all of these things that an SRE does, right, or the production operations does, is basically meeting our SLOs and SLAs needs. We are making sure that our customers are happy using the product. That is the end goal of any organization, because the customer happiness means your brand reputation increases. Your customers will stick with you, as well as new customers would come to you. It's as simple as that. So whatever an SRE does has a direct impact to the customer happiness, right? So let's move on. Now, how did we start? So I joined Harness about 3 years back, and we had one module at that time, the continuous delivery module. So the engineers pretty much had few alerts set up in our backend APM tools as well as in GCP. We run our stuff in GCP. So we had the alerts, but we did publish our outages or incidents on the status page. But what we didn't have are what are the service level indicators that we should start off with. So like all of us, right? We follow the Google SRE handbook and we follow their template. So we started off with the 4 golden signals: latency, availability, and so on. So those signals definitely helped us to start off on this SLI journey. So we were able to get the visibility into the overall system reliability. Uh, but it didn't really answer the question. Like, we were startup at that time, we were starting off, we had customers, and some of our customers were mentioning, we see the slowness here, we see the latency from our region, and so on. So it still didn't answer the question whether the site is completely down or the site is partially down. So as part of that, what we decided to do in our next step was to basically focus on the real user metrics. Now, the real user metrics that we decided to focus on was the few of them. I'm just jotting it down here. One was the end user response time. Like, what's the response time for the end user? How much the page load is taking, and how many error rates. So we started off with this, trying to understand, and this gave us an overview of, say, a customer in US East or a customer in US West is the only one who is experiencing latency issues. Then we were able to at least drill down into these individual business transactions to find out like what is going on, why are they having an issue from their end. So it helped us quantify also like whether we are having a partial or a complete outage. Like all of us, right? When we define our SLIs, SLOs, and SLAs, it's very important, especially from the SLA point of view. What is a partial outage? What is a complete outage? If we use status for reporting our incidents and reporting the errors. So partial outage constitutes 30% of your total time. You are basically, error budget will be 30%. And when it's complete outage, it is complete outage. You can't do much. So it helped us at least quantify what is partial, what is complete. So that was the next step that we took. Now, So this was fine, and Harness now has about close to 8 modules. We have an entire platform. So this would tell us, the earlier slide would tell us, like, as a whole, how is our site doing, like how app.harness.io is performing. But at the same time, it was becoming more and more important for us to define these SLIs, SLOs, as well as the agreements per module or per product that we have. So what we try to do as part of this exercise is, like, some user flows are very critical, right? And some are non-critical. For example, when someone is using Harness continuous delivery product, or when someone is using the Harness CI product, the critical flows is I'm not able to deploy my application, or I'm not able to build my application. Those are like critical user flows. And there are non-critical user flows. When I say non-critical, it doesn't mean that it's okay to let it slide. What all I mean is the non-critical user flows, like for example, the dashboard is slow, or because the backend is slow, or the backend is kind of overloaded. So if someone is unable to see the deployment stats, it is still an outage for us, but it comes under non-critical user flows. So we started defining the SLIs to identify these critical and non-critical user flows. So, and we went into, for the critical user flows, we went into the API calls. Like, it cannot be one API call, it's probably a combination of multiple API calls, which kind of indicates what the customer is seeing at the end of the day. So for example, when someone is doing a deployment, or when someone is doing a pipeline execution for us, if the average response time for that individual business transaction is, example is like 10 seconds for a period of 5 minutes, that means we probably are having a major outage. But if the same thing happens, someone is, the dashboard is loading slowly, we do take it as an incident, but we report it as a partial incident. So this way, today, where we stand is basically we are able to define what exactly is a partial, what exactly is a complete outage. And then we do share our RCS with the customers. If you go to status.harness.io, you will be able to see, like, for each of the incident that we took, whether it's partial or whether it's complete outage, we do post the RCA over there. Now, what next, right? So it's not like you define your SLIs, you define your SLOs, and you are done. It's not that simple. For SREs, nothing is simple, and this is the same. Because as a startup, we develop features at a very rapid pace. And that means, as we do that, we might introduce some unintended consequences, we introduce some bugs, and so on. And some of the service level indicators that we had defined, say, a year back, may not be that critical, or something else will be critical. So it's always an iterative process for us. And also, what we also started doing was is to make sure that we set up the alerts, not at the service level alerts, but the alerts for these SLI breaches themselves. Like in the previous example where I mentioned the execution is taking X amount of time for a duration of 10 minutes, that means we get an alert, and each of these alert we take very seriously. It's not something that we let it slide. The customer may be seeing an impact at that time, or may not. We have kind of uh, we don't put on the lenient aspect of it. We make sure that our thresholds are very strict. So any of these alerts we follow up. And we are also looking at how we can set up the policy management for the services breaching the SLI thresholds. For example, we have 8 modules, and each of the module comes with 5 or 6 services. Now, if one of the module services has been constantly hitting the SLI thresholds and constantly using their error budgets, and we don't want that to happen, right? We want the engineers to go fix the code, and we want them to make sure that what they are deploying in production is actually not breaching the thresholds. So we have started implementing this as well. Now, SREs themselves, right? We can define, we can follow up on the alerts, we can follow up on the SLIs, we make sure we meet our customer defined SLAs. At the same time, The SRE culture is very important. It's just not enough if only SREs responds to the alerts. So the last 2 3 years at Harness, we made sure like the SRE culture is very much imbibed into each of the engineer. The engineers are on pager duty. They get the call, they get the paged along with the SREs when we get the alerts. And they take it to the conclusion. They even read the RCAs, and we have the RCA postmortems and so on. So for us, meeting these SLOs and SLIs and SLAs, it's not one person thing. It's basically, or one department. It's basically the entire organization needs to get into this mindset of SRE culture. We are also moving towards chaos as well, and we want to observe like how when we induce chaos into our services, like how it impact the SLOs and the SLIs and the SLAs. So that's the next step. Hopefully we will cover it at some point. And once again, thanks a lot for the SLOconf for letting Harness represent our SLO and SLI journey. Thank you. Bye.